If you've ever wondered how to navigate pregnancy with a thyroid condition, or if you're planning to grow your family someday, this episode is for you. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that leaves so many thyroid patients feeling unprepared, confused, and in the dark: pregnancy. So, whether it's fertility challenges, unclear lab results, or just trying to advocate for yourself in a healthcare system that often overlooks thyroid issues, there's a lot to unpack here. And no one explains it better than Rachel Hill. Rachel is a thyroid health advocate and the best-selling author behind The Invisible Hypothyroidism. She's just released a brand new book, the Positive Thyroid Pregnancy Book. This is the book that I wish I had during my own childbearing journey, and it's going to help thyroid patients feel informed, empowered, and supported through every stage from preconception to postpartum. So the show is going to do just the same for you. It's going to be a great, informative, and empowering show, Thyroid Thrivers. So stick around. Hello, Thyroid Thrivers, and welcome back to another episode of the Thyroid-Healthy Bites podcast, with bi-weekly episodes dedicated to helping you eat well, live well, and feel well. I'm Ginny Mahar, a functional medicine health coach, cordon bleu chef, and your thyroid health and cooking coach. So if you're ready to get inspired, informed, and empowered with thyroid-friendly food and lifestyle topics, expert interviews, and tales from the healing journey, you're in the right place, friend. Let's dig in. All right, welcome back to the show, Thyroid Thrivers. I'm so happy to be here today with a friend and fellow thyroid advocate, Rachel Hill. Welcome back to Thyroid-Healthy Bites, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm hoping to have even more amazing discussions today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Rachel was on the podcast a little while back. We had a very awesome, informative, and, positive, empowering conversation about parenting with hypothyroidism. So if any of you listening, if that is information you need, you can check out episode 48 of the podcast to hear that conversation. But it's always a pleasure to see you and connect with you from across the pond. And I'm so excited about your new book. Congratulations. We were just before we hit record today, Rachel and I were talking about books as like book babies, right? And you've got a few of them now. And it really is such a perfect analogy, isn't it, for that process of like creating and writing and bringing to the world this this book. So really excited to be able to share this one with my community, because it's such a needed resource.
Yeah, that's wholeheartedly how I feel about it. I know this book came from everything that I needed when I fell pregnant 6 or 7 years ago now. My first pregnancy unfortunately didn't last, and then I embarked on this journey to have a more positive pregnancy experience, and thankfully that's then what happened. I now have my two sons who are 5 and 3. They keep me very busy, and I wanted to share all of that experience and that knowledge with other people because we know as thyroid patients, our fertility is often impacted, or if you Google anything related to pregnancy and having a thyroid condition, a lot of what comes up is scary and it's daunting and it's overwhelming. And it's why I named the book the Positive Thyroid Pregnancy Book. It was because I wanted to deliver that information, but with hope that that's not all of it. We can know how to navigate it if we have the right information and the right resources.
Absolutely. So much of that comes from being informed. And I have to say, I love this cover. I love this illustrator you've worked with. So Rachel also has Thyroid Superhero. This is an awesome children's book for people with thyroid issues that they can read to their children and share more with them about, like, what is it like for a parent who's dealing with thyroid issues. But it looks like, is this the same illustrator that did the cover for this? Okay, so for those of you who aren't watching on YouTube and just listening, the cover has this beautiful butterfly, and then the body of the butterfly is a pregnancy test. So cool.
Yeah, that was I went to the illustrator with a couple of ideas which were a lot more shall we say, like safe, not very out there. And she came back and she was like, I've just had this idea. And she sent me like an initial sketch of it. And we both just went, whoa, that's really different, but in a good way. And I thought it was just a nice way to put the concepts together.
Oh,
Hopefully just catch the eye of people scrolling so then they can stop and think, oh, does that apply? Would that be a helpful book? Yeah, that was the idea. So
yeah.
really happy with the end result. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I think it absolutely works and it's so appropriate. I'm excited to kind of dig into a lot of what you've, already kind of hinted at. Before we do that, just to tell the listeners a little bit more about you, Rachel Hill is the multi-award-winning thyroid patient advocate, author, speaker, and content creator behind The Invisible Hypothyroidism. Her thyroid advocacy work includes writing articles, authoring best-selling books, writing her Substack newsletters, appearing on TV, radio, and podcasts, and speaking at events about the many aspects of thyroid disease and how it affects us and how to navigate it. So, you just have so much to offer. I love your content. I love your Instagram. Everybody needs to check you out there. But why don't we start with I'd love to hear, a little bit more about, and I know you kind of touched on this, like your own journey, your loss. I'm so sorry about that. I think that, is something so many of us go through. I certainly went through some of that myself. But what really drove you to write the Positive Thyroid Pregnancy Book, and is it how has it been important to your personal thyroid journey?
Yeah, so it all began when I initially fell pregnant and lost that pregnancy. I found out shortly after with a follow-up thyroid blood test that my free T4 thyroid hormone level had dropped below the range, and it was an initial discussion that I had with the doctor around whether that would have contributed, had that was that low, and that's what caused the miscarriage. We could never be sure, but they were certain that there was probably a contributing factor there, and that began this journey for me of, okay, before I try again, before I try to conceive again, what can I do to essentially get all my ducks in a row, to optimize things as much as I can, to reduce my chances of this happening again. And I decided that I would not try again until I felt like I'd done all of those things. As a side note, after having the miscarriage, which had happened at 6 weeks, so it was very early on, I was really surprised to find that my body didn't return to this like state of equilibrium for a good 9 months after. So my periods weren't regular. I was having a lot of migraines. I was having a lot of acne. Hormonally, I was just kind of all over the place, as physically as well as mentally as well. Um, that by the time things settled, I was sort of on my way to understanding these various jigsaw puzzle pieces, as I like to refer to them, slotting those into place. Those various aspects that I was learning were really important to optimize my fertility and the chances of a healthy pregnancy the next time around. I sort of hit the year mark. It got to about 14 months past the initial miscarriage. My husband and I decided to try again, and that second time around, I fell pregnant very quickly. It stuck. We had a healthy sort of textbook pregnancy, but even throughout a pregnancy like that, I still had a lot of questions. What do I do if I'm having morning sickness and I'm therefore not absorbing my thyroid medication correctly? What are my chances of breastfeeding going successfully after I've given birth? Are there any aspects of giving birth that are affected as a thyroid patient? All of these questions that when I was putting them into Google, I just couldn't find what I was looking for, or I found the information was often scattered, whether in articles or research papers or on social media accounts or in various books. And I just wanted to collate all of that together to therefore create, I guess, like this guide for other people going through that experience because we know thyroid disease is really prevalent, it's very common, and I'm certainly not the only person going through a pregnancy with it. So I knew that other people would need that same information and perhaps be given the information that we don't always think about. So, for example, how to exercise safely when you're pregnant, but also with the thyroid condition, because as we know, it can be very easy to put yourself into a flare where you have a flare up in fatigue, you overexert yourself, you do too much. And that's just without being pregnant. But when you're pregnant, it's a lot easier to do those things because your body is going through so much and it's doing so much every day. So I felt that there was a lot of nuance there for perhaps areas that a lot of thyroid patients hadn't even considered themselves, that if they're on that journey, that information presented to them in the right format could be really, really valuable. And so, yeah, I went through two more pregnancies, which, like I say, were the first one was very textbook, very straightforward. The second one less so. We might touch on that later. And as I went through those journeys, I just wrote everything down that I found to be really helpful. Lots of sort of nuggets and tidbits here and there, and that formed like this outline of a book that I knew once I had the headspace, we're now a few years past having my youngest. I knew once I had the headspace, I wanted to format that into a more concise, a more concise resource for people to read, as opposed to at the moment it's sort of over my social media and website in fragments here and there. And I wanted something that people could write in, highlight, put post-it notes in, really make it like a working book for wherever they are in that journey.
Yeah, I really can't think of another resource that I know of that I could point people to before you put this book out. And there are so many questions. Just, listening to you, I'm like, I still have questions about my pregnancy that I don't understand that, the doctors were just kind of like, well, I don't know, didn't really get clear answers about, because I was diagnosed postpartum with hypothyroidism. So I've always wondered, well, it- did it affect my pregnancy? Could it? I mean, and my son is healthy, thank goodness, and all of that, but could it have affected him in utero? And then when I was breastfeeding for that first year, I felt like I had a hard time making enough milk. And the doctors were like, he's gaining weight, he's healthy, don't worry about it. But like, I could never pump milk so I could like get a night off, or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I during that time also my hypothyroidism was not, it was poorly managed during that time. So I feel like I'm one of those people who doesn't convert T4 to T3 very well. So I was having a lot of hypothyroid symptoms and I'm like, well, how much of that had to do with my breast milk production? So going through this book, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. And Rachel, like it's so meaningful too, because honestly, and like I'm gonna try not to cry here, like after I had my son, then those first 4 years after that, when I was diagnosed and it was very poorly managed, and I had like all day fatigue, was sick all the time, terrible brain fog, and was just struggling to get through the day, much less raise my son, be the mother he deserved, the mother I wanted to be for him, all of those responsibilities that we have. It made it obviously much more difficult. And we ultimately, I was kind of afraid to have another child because of it. And then it kind of, time sort of decides these things for us, right? And
Yeah.
I ultimately decided not to, and I'm at peace with that decision. But like, I was reading this and I thought, if I had had this back then, I would have felt so much more confident in like what I needed to be asking my doctors about and testing and do I have Hashimoto's? And I'm not sure this medication is working. We'd like to maybe consider having another child. Like, how can I do that safely without feeling like I'm already so compromised with my health? How can my body handle this? Because as you touched on, pregnancy is like a stress on the body, and there's good forms of stress, right? Like exercise. But one thing I talk to my coaching clients and my Thrivers Club community about so much is like we have to think of our total stress load and what we're putting on the body. Like when you're talking about things like you're pregnant and you're exercising and maybe you're also working and maybe you have relationship stress and maybe you have other forms of stress, like that is something I think we are really forced to become more aware of as thyroid patients, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have to, otherwise we just cease to function. Or at least that's what I've learned. I can't, and I spoke about this on social media just the other day. I can't juggle as much as I used to compared to pre-thyroid condition me. I just can't. I was at one point, in education, juggling a part-time job, running a business. I had all these hobbies and things. At the time, I was like 18, 19. And then my health took this nosedive, and that's just not possible now. And I
Mhm.
think to go back to what you said about becoming a parent with a thyroid condition as well, I talk about this in the book when you fall pregnant, you go through pregnancy with a thyroid condition, that's one thing, but there isn't any information out there about what happens after you become a parent, after that baby comes out, because your thyroid condition does not go away. And in fact, it often flares up. It gets harder to manage because your body's recovering from a huge stressor, as you say, on the body that often depletes you of thyroid hormone, iron, various vitamins and minerals and nutrients. Your reserves often depleted. You're more likely to be sort of stressed adrenally. You're with adrenal dysfunction. Your gut microbiome might be thrown off. A lot of people after they've given birth, they're reaching for whatever is easy food to keep them going. You're up at all times of the night. You're perhaps reaching for a cereal bar to keep you going at 2 a.m. Like your whole rhythm and routine is thrown off. And not to mention the fact that your sleep is completely different if you're getting much
Oh,
sleep.
yeah.
So you've got all
Yeah.
of that on top of having a thyroid condition. And I know that for me personally, a lot of these puzzle pieces that I talk about when I talk about managing your thyroid condition include things like your gut health, your diet, your sleep, exercise. And with that, I mean exercising in a way that it promotes good health and it promotes more energy, not exercise that's draining you and making you feel worse. And doing all of that whilst having this new human that's totally dependent on you to look after, and you're recovering from birthing that human, however you birth them, that is a lot. And it just shocked me that there was no information out there to not only guide people through it, but just to echo that you're not alone,
Mhm.
and that there are other people out there doing this same juggle. I
Yeah.
know in the parenting groups that I was in. So over here we have sort of like antenatal classes. They're called NCT classes, and we were grouped up with people in like a WhatsApp group or like Facebook groups. You can keep in touch, and we all gave birth to our babies around the same time, and we would meet up. And I just remember feeling like such a failure that I felt I couldn't do as much as a lot of those other parents because they would be out all day with their baby, going from a morning class to meeting a friend for coffee and going to something else. And I just very quickly realized that the balance for me was to either go out for a couple of hours in the morning and then be at home for the rest of the day, or vice versa. I could not be out all day without setting my health so far back because being on the go, not home taking the chance to sit down when the baby didn't actually need me, or having to like walk them for naps in the pushchair all the time. It's exhausting. And if you have a health condition like thyroid disease, that's just another thing that you are juggling. And so you may not be able to do as much as other new parents that aren't juggling that piece of the puzzle. And so yeah, it was really important for me to just get that across as well, and to just encourage us all to be kind to ourselves and look after
Mhm.
ourselves, because we can't pour from an empty cup. And I think I'm also a huge advocate of role modeling to our children how we want them to look after themselves when they're adults as well. And that means learning boundaries and modeling those boundaries, and yeah, coming to learn how much your body can juggle at any one time, like you touched on with various aspects.
Yeah. And as the mother currently of a 13-year-old, I can tell you that you're right. And those things do, like now I'm really seeing how that has trickled down to my son in the fact that we have to take care of our bodies and it's okay for us to have needs. And sometimes we're on our A game and sometimes we're not. And it's all okay. We have to just meet ourselves where we are, tune into our bodies and yeah, so many important points there that you bring up, especially, just that knowing that it's okay and that you're not alone and that, sometimes we just can't compare ourselves to someone who isn't living with hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's. It's a different thing. Um, I think there's so many different misunderstandings around thyroid and pregnancy. I'm curious, were there some common myths or misconceptions that you really wanted to address in the book?
I'd say the main one is that we can't have healthy babies or we can't have healthy pregnancies, or really just that it's hard to fall pregnant. It certainly can be. I think the main message is to optimize your thyroid hormone levels. If your thyroid hormone levels are optimized, it puts you in a great place to fall pregnant and sustain a pregnancy. Obviously, then keeping on top of regular monitoring. So in the book, I mentioned every 4 to 6 weeks generally is the advice throughout pregnancy to check your thyroid hormone levels so that you can catch any changes very quickly. Um, but yeah, generally, I don't think I'm the only person that was told when I was diagnosed with a thyroid condition, oh, just take this pill every day. Come back when you're pregnant. Or come back when you want to get pregnant. That's when we really need to think about it. And it's almost like written off under this, it's so hard to even fall pregnant with a thyroid condition, and that's just generally accepted. But like I say, if we know what questions to ask, what tests to ask for, how to optimize thyroid hormone levels, as opposed to them just falling somewhere within a very wide range, then that can make a huge difference. And that is really the foundation of everything that I talk about in the book. Once you've got that in place, often your fertility is quite well supported. And then we can look at things like nutrient levels and stress management and sleep and exercise. And also, the men's fertility as well. That's also, 50% of what makes a baby as well.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'd say generally the biggest misconception is just that it's hard to fall pregnant or that we can't
Mhm.
have a healthy baby, that they might be born with developmental delays or need to stay in the NICU or, yeah, anything like that, which there is an increased chance of with a thyroid condition of those things happening. But we can definitely minimize those by a fair bit if we know, again, what to ask for, what we're looking for on test results, and just kind of feel empowered to advocate for not only ourselves, but also our unborn child's life as well. Because when you fall pregnant, you are ultimately advocating for the both of you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. You answered so many of my questions about, fertility and some of the risk there and testing. So that's very helpful. And I think it's important too to understand like this journey starts before you want to get pregnant, and that there are those strong links there between hypothyroidism and fertility being affected in both men and women. So, how does your book kind of help people navigate those things?
So I have it split into three parts. So part one is before falling pregnant. So what you can do to optimize your fertility, also how to know if you're at the right point in your life in general, especially when linked to your thyroid condition. So is your thyroid condition under control? Are you having many flares? Work considerations within your family. It talks about all of that before falling pregnant. The middle section, part two, is all about navigating pregnancy. So you find out you're pregnant, woohoo, what to do going forward. And then part three is all about that postpartum period. And within those, it's split into what I call steps. So you have chapters, but the main chapters, which will cover, the 10, 15 things that you can do to optimize your fertility will be step one, optimize your thyroid hormone levels. Step two, look into Hashimoto's and thyroid antibodies. And step three, nutrient levels. It sort of walks through like that in a very, I hope, a very clear way that you can bookmark, that you can come back to, so that as people read it, they can pick out what applies to their situation, because not everyone will have Hashimoto's. Not everyone will even know if they have Hashimoto's. That's another thing. Some people will know that their iron and their B12 and folate and all of those things have been optimized, so they can leave that step and look at something else. So it's broken down in a way that people can take what applies to their situation, and perhaps leave what they know does not. I'm a big advocate across everything that I do within the thyroid sphere, of really driving the message home that there is no one size fits all, whether that comes to your thyroid medication treatment, Dietary, other lifestyle factors, I really don't think there's one treatment for all of us. I think we have to listen to our own bodies and figure out which parts of our lifestyle may need some attention, which dietary changes might help each of us. It's really individual. And so with all of my books, I carry that ethos across, and that's the same with this one as well.
Yes, yeah, the f food and lifestyle, right, is a big piece of the puzzle, and there are many pieces of the puzzle. I always call it the thyroid trifecta. You know, we need to think about our medical treatment, our food, and our lifestyle to really feel our best and thrive. And that includes, fertility, pregnancy, parenthood, and beyond. Hey, Thyroid Thrivers, Jenny here. I just want to pop in with a real quick message. If you're listening to today's show and thinking, I want to get started with this, I want to feel better, I need support, and that is my missing piece, I've got good news for you. I have created the group health coaching membership for Thyroid Thrivers just like you. It's called the Thrivers Club, and you can learn more about it at hypothyroidchef.com/membership. When you become a Thrivers Club member, you get access to me, your personal on-demand health and cooking coach, a full recipe library of thyroid-friendly recipes, including gluten-free, dairy-free, paleo, and AIP recipes. You get access to an amazing, positive, healing-focused community of other thyroid thrivers who get it and who know what it's like to face the unique challenges that we face. You also get access to loads of expert resources created not just by me, but by other thyroid experts, doctors, nutritionists, all kinds of brilliant minds in the thyroid space. And one of the best parts about the Thrivers Club, and really where the results happen for people, is that you get access as a member to our monthly wellness challenges. And those wellness challenges just provide extra inspiration and motivation to make those small but mighty steps that get us where we want to be on our healing journey. Let's find out what happens when you have that support that you need. I'd love to welcome you to the Thrivers Club. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to hypothyroidchef.com/membership. So check out the Thrivers Club today. Okay, back to the show. As you and I both know, a lot of people in this community really struggle to get proper care, to get the testing that they need. People commonly feel dismissed by their providers. How can women better advocate for themselves during pregnancy?
So within the book, I have linked to various references, especially US and UK guidelines that you can refer to, that your doctor should really be following or at least taking into consideration. So you can definitely use resources like that. I think ultimately you want to find a doctor that you feel understands you and is on the same wavelength and wants to give you the level of treatment that you're looking for. I think if you're going back and forth to the same doctor and really feeling like you're hitting a brick wall, that's probably a sign that you need to look elsewhere. And I know that can be really overwhelming to take a step back and try somewhere new. But like I said previously, if you're advocating for yours and, a possible future child's health as well, a child that I imagine you really want, then these are the sort of considerations that we need to take into account. And here in the UK, most people use the NHS service. So within that, you can very easily see a different GP. You can request to see a different endocrinologist. I know that for me at my doctor's surgery, I tried 9 different doctors until I found one who would test the full thyroid panel and agreed to do so every 4 to 6 weeks throughout pregnancy. And it was exhausting. It was, but I knew that it was something that I just was not going to back down on. Um, with those things aside, there are now a wide range of online testing options. I use here in the UK, we have MediChecks. There's also like Paloma and Let's Get a Check. There's various providers now that people can utilize as well. A lot of them are a lot more affordable than people think they are, so they can be really worth exploring. we continue to have ongoing struggles here in the UK on the NHS getting full thyroid panel testing. So that is something that I utilize at least a couple of times a year as well. So yeah, just being aware that all these resources are out there, and then choosing which path kind of suits you and your situation. That also can be really well worth knowing and really powerful when it comes to advocating for yourself.
Yeah, and just knowing that those options are out there is a good thing. And I think a lot of people are unaware of not just what to ask for, but how to get it and how can we get those things, even if we're in a situation where we're having a hard time getting that from our own providers. I know Paloma Health has been very helpful to me. That their thyroid specific care though, so it's like we have to really be the CEOs of our own health and managing our various providers, our healthcare team, so to speak, and keeping everyone abreast of like what's going on, so that everyone's in the loop. I'd love to circle back to food and lifestyle a little bit, though. I'm curious, and I know and couldn't agree more that there is no one size fits all. It depends on the individual, what aspects of thyroid friendly living are going to be more important for one person or more effective for one person versus another. But do you have any like favorite food and lifestyle tips, maybe from the book or even throughout your own pregnancies that really helped you?
Yeah, I think for me, the single biggest diet change that made a big difference to me in terms of energy, brain fog, muscle aches and pains, and acne was going gluten-free. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that because we know it can be a hard lifestyle change to make. There will be others of going dairy-free, soy-free, and nightshades. There are, grain-free. There are various different diets that you will see recommended across the internet for thyroid patients. Gluten-free is what comes up most often. We have some information out there about why that might be so. I think we're just starting to see sort of research and studies come in about it now. A lot of it's still largely anecdotal, but it's there for a reason. It does help a lot of people. I think it's well worth exploring. That's not to say there aren't people who try it and see absolutely no difference whatsoever, but that made a huge difference for me. And I was kind of hoping it wouldn't. I didn't want to have to commit to it long term, but a few months in, I was completely sold. So I've been gluten free now for about 8 or 9 years, and you just don't even think about it anymore. Um, as well for me, I don't drink alcohol. I gave up alcohol about a year before I started trying to conceive, and that was for a few reasons. I wanted to optimize my fertility. I never felt good, even after having one drink, I would have a thyroid flare the next day. I just felt like my body did not process alcohol very well. And is your body supposed to process alcohol very well? It is a toxin, So yeah, and I don't tolerate caffeine very well. It gives me headaches and migraines. So those are the things I generally stay away from. In terms of more general advice that we can all utilize, one really simple thing that we can do with our diets is to focus on eating with balancing our blood sugar, keeping it balanced in mind. This can make a huge difference to your energy levels, your sort of like cognitive function, and how clearly you're feeling throughout the day. Um, Heart palpitations, a lot of people have heart palpitations, don't realize that it's because they're eating a whole plate full of carbs or sugar, and there's no sustenance in terms of like the protein and fiber to it that's really going to like bring that glycemic index number right down. So if you can eat in a way when it comes to snacks and meals, that you're really focusing on getting at least, I say, and you might disagree, so I know you have a lot more experience in this area. But my functional medicine practitioner has always said to focus on having at least a third protein and healthy fats on my plate to 2/3 mostly veg and some kind of like starch, whether that's like whole grain brown rice or things like that. And generally, I do find that following that as a guideline helps to like visually look at my plate and see that. Um, and that just kind of keeps you full for a good few hours. It's going to give you more sustained energy instead of feeling terrible an hour later once your blood sugar's sort of gone up and back down again and you're feeling cranky and you've got a headache. And yeah, that again, that's going to support your fertility among other things. But even if you're not pregnant, that simple tip I know has helped like a lot of thyroid patients. Just anyone really, anyone who's struggling with fatigue and brain fog and any of those things. And get your fiber in. I think there's been a big focus on eating high protein diets, and for that whole reason that I've just touched on. But a lot of us are also not consuming enough fiber, which is so important for that annoying hypothyroid symptom of constipation. It's important for your gut health. It's important for your energy and just everything. So I'm a big advocate of eating a rainbow of fruit and veg. And yeah, whenever I'm plating up like a snack or a meal, always asking myself where's the colour coming from. So trying to get a good range of colour on the plate as well. But yeah, I'm sure you've got more to add about all of that.
I concur with all of that. And that, those are the same things that we work on in my community, eating the rainbow, thinking about, protein with every meal and snack to eat in a way that's blood sugar friendly. Also, healthy fats and fiber are going to help with, blood sugar stability as well. And I would think that that would be especially important during pregnancy too, with looking at some of those risks around blood sugar when you're pregnant.
Yes, yeah. And I think as well as gestational diabetes being a factor in sort of like general pregnancies, I think pretty much across the globe now, women are checked for gestational diabetes anyway. When you have a thyroid condition, and this is something I touch on in the book, we are higher risk for those sort of complications. So I was monitored more closely, which thankfully I didn't develop, but for gestational diabetes as well. So again, anything that we can do to just try and support our bodies to keep pregnancy as simple as possible, as low risk as possible, and really just to promote good energy levels. Pregnant women are known for getting more constipated. Your body often slows right down because of the hormonal fluctuations that are going on. So anything that you can do to support your body through those symptoms as well during pregnancy, it's all going to help. So yeah, I really talk about in the book about building these as foundations before you even fall pregnant, and then to continue with them throughout pregnancy, just to continue supporting your body through that time. And then hopefully by the time you are a parent, a lot of them are just part of your routine and sort of well established just to kind of see you through then into that new transition.
This is another area of where you've done a lot of advocacy work and authorship is thinking about how we can lean on our loved ones and bring them into our healing journey. How can partners, friends, or family members help support someone who's going through pregnancy with a thyroid condition?
So through my personal experience, I learnt to have my husband there at the antenatal classes and the appointments as much as possible. You are more likely to experience brain fog and fatigue. They call it pregnancy brain and baby brain for a reason. Have your partner there or your mum, your friend, have someone there at the appointments, at the classes for support. It's really good to have someone who can recall information as well and just remind you of certain things. There are certain parts of appointments that I'm sure I just completely blanked out. I just could not recall for the life of me because of that pregnancy brain. And so it helped a great deal to have him there and to have him taking notes as well. When I was pregnant, we spent a lot of time focusing on what our support network would look like. So we set expectations with parents, would-be grandparents about, well, we'd like to see you on this day and have you visit on this day and sort of build these routines in as well so that I knew there were certain days each week that I would have that support in the house or asking them when they came to bring some food with them. So my husband is of Indian descent, so his family are very likely to bring things like bean curries and like very like nourishing, wholesome foods. And they're what you need after you've given birth. You need food that's full of all of that stuff. So yeah, we had a good support network that we built up before I gave birth, and we set expectations too, which I think is really important for the first couple of months after giving birth. If you, and I do recommend this, if you want to keep things simple by not having many visitors to begin with, focusing on establishing your bonds as a family and breastfeeding, if that's what you wish to do and things like that. You can also set those expectations while you're pregnant as well, and just make people aware that you won't be having an open door in the first few weeks after giving birth. So we can form all of that support and all of those expectations while we're still pregnant as well, and then just convey those to those around us. But yeah, I think for us the biggest form of support that we found useful was when people came to visit us, we would ask them if they would bring some food with them. And if we were overwhelmed with food, we could always put things in the freezer, for like a week or so later. So that was like a really good tip for us. And when I was pregnant as well, I did a lot of batch cooking myself of things like a bolognese or bean chilies, things that freeze quite well. Just filled the freezer right up, and then whenever we needed a meal, we could just grab it and put it with some rice or some veggies or pasta, whatever it was that we had to hand. And it just meant that we were still eating quite nutritiously in that like really demanding newborn stage, which it can make a big difference to how you feel.
Oh my gosh, so much. Yeah, just having a home cooked meal. That's what we did after our son was born. A friend helped us organize a meal train. So we would have friends come by, I think it was once or twice a week. And they, had like a calendar and they would sign up for a night to come by, meet the baby, and bring food. And it was like, it was the best gift we could have gotten ever, to just have a lovingly prepared home cooked meal. It felt good for people to contribute. And then it also saved us from oh, the baby's here. Let's all come to the house in the first week or two when everyone is exhausted and losing their minds. So we could kind of space it out that way, which was really nice. And now they have, like the meal train app and all that, that makes all that so much easier. And then, there's, of course, you can just look for recipes too that maybe something needs to be eaten that night, like a salad or, something like that. But a lot of things can be frozen as well, and bringing freezer meals can be such a huge gift to anyone who has, recently had a baby or maybe just gone through surgery or something like that. And really, kind of the basic guidelines there are to look for things that don't contain dairy. Dairy doesn't freeze well. And things like noodles, especially like some of the gluten-free pastas that don't do well if they get overcooked, they're not going to improve in the freezer. So any kind of like soup that just has a lot of like veggies, like, you know, thinking about a soup we just had for dinner last night here, just like a vegetable beef soup with like a beef and tomato based broth that would freeze so well. Or like you said, chilies, Thai curries, if they're made with coconut milk, of course, dairy free, that freezes pretty well and thaws pretty well. Things like that are just so wonderful to have in the freezer for when you're exhausted. I remember just, it's like, how can I even I can't make a meal right now. Are you kidding? I've had like 3 hours of sleep in the last 2 days, you know?
That's it.
Um,
And that's when it would be easy to pick up the phone and order another takeaway, right? And I always say the odd takeaway here and there, if it's not a regular habit, it's unlikely to have a huge detriment to your health and your thyroid condition. But like as a rule, as a household, we go many months between ordering takeaways. And if we do, even now you can get much sort of like healthier options. Like our favorite is Vietnamese. We almost always order
oh
like
yeah.
pho, like you say, a lovely like noodle broth, and you can add so many veggies and things in. That's often our go-to. So even if you are going to order a takeaway, there's more options now than even like 5 years ago when it was all relatively unhealthy options. So yeah, that still exists, but if you can, and to touch on what you said about like Thai curries and things like that as well, we batch cooked a lot of like pastes. So we would make like katsu curry. I'd make up a katsu curry paste using coconut milk and other ingredients, and then I would freeze that often as like cubes, like ice cube sort of size,
Yeah.
and then we could just defrost that with some fresh chicken and put veg or rice or anything like that on the side. And again, easy meal option. And if you're not pregnant, these are great hacks if you have a thyroid flare day.
Oh,
Like,
they're for yeah, for any
yeah,
thyroid thriver. It's like the freezer is your friend because
yeah,
when you're eating for your health, when you're eating to thrive, just like we talked about, we're talking about whole food meals that are prepared from scratch. And a lot of times, you know, that's going to happen at home. We don't dine out that much either because we like to be a little bit more in control of what we're eating. It's convenient and nice to go out. We certainly do that. But yeah, to have some things in the freezer that way that can just make a meal come together more quickly is just such a hack for anyone who is trying to eat more real food, which is really kind of the foundation. Just eat real food, you know, make some home cooked meals, try, cooking more. Um, how can we make that easier to do on a regular basis so that we can, avoid those pitfalls of I'm exhausted. Let's just order pizza, even though I know it's going to make me feel terrible. It's so easy to do that when we don't have things like stashed in the freezer we can lean on.
yeah, exactly. And so we did a lot of that when I was pregnant. I still do it now. I most nights, whatever I make for dinner, there will be an extra sort of like portion for dinner again the next night, or we'll use it for lunch the next day. I'm terrible for lunch ideas. When I'm working, I will take like a bit of a break and I just need something easy to grab. So using those like dinner leftovers the next day for lunch is like the perfect way to make sure I'm still getting a nutritious lunch as well. So there are these like what I consider to be quite small hacks and changes that we can do to the way that we eat just to set ourselves up. So don't always assume that you're going to have the enthusiasm and the time and the energy to cook a really extravagant meal after you've had a full day of looking after the children or working or running errands or doing whatever it is that you're doing. Do what you need to make it easier. If you know you're not going to be in the place to cook a full meal from scratch later or tomorrow or later on in the week, what can you do to set yourself up for that? And that might be batch cooking some curry paste or some simple meals and putting them in the freezer on a Sunday night, knowing that you'll need a couple for later on in the week when things get really crazy, on a Wednesday when you're running the kids to football practice or whatever it is you're doing. So yeah, if you can sort of look ahead and just plan for those crazier seasons of life and those crazier days in the week, then you're setting yourself up for more success later on. So yeah, I'm a big fan of things like that. I think a lot of the time it can feel really overwhelming and it can get a bit much thinking I need to take this out of my diet and that, and I need to change this and avoid that. And often what actually helps more is variety and putting more things in to our diet. Instead of focusing on taking 20 things out, what can you add in? I love adding mixed nuts and seeds to porridge, to salads. I just have them there on the kitchen counter all the time. Whenever I see them, I will sprinkle those in. A small change like that, it's so simple. Um, and it's so versatile, but that can improve your gut health, your fiber content, your healthy fat, various things from
Absolutely.
such a simple change. And a bag of mixed nuts and seeds lasts a good few weeks in our house as well, even with all the sprinkling on everything. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm all about these sort of like small manageable changes that shouldn't take up a lot of time or energy.
Absolutely. And I think it's reassuring for people to hear too that, for people who have been on this path a while, it exactly like you said, it's not about having the most restricted diet. For so many of us who have been on this path a while, we find that we can really tolerate a lot of different foods. And that, yes, the focus really becomes all of the different, so much variety in all the different colorful plant foods and high quality proteins and all the different healthy fats we can incorporate into our cooking and like thinking about the plate, it doesn't have to be fancy. A protein, maybe some steamed vegetables. Maybe if you tolerate something like gluten-free grains, you could do something like quinoa, or you could incorporate some kind of healthy fat like some avocado. It can be very basic. It doesn't have to be difficult. And over time we learn what our bodies really need for us to thrive. And oftentimes that isn't avoiding multiple foods. I think the elimination diets are a great tool to help us discover those
Yeah.
things and can also be very therapeutic for those of us who do need to do some healing, like especially we're trying to maybe heal our gut. A lot of people do kind of have to start there with that elimination diet. But, yeah, Rachel, you and I have been on this path for a long time, and I'm kind of the same. I avoid gluten. I minimize dairy. I can tolerate certain types of dairy, and that's about it. I can enjoy pretty much everything else. There are certain things I need to moderate, like I can't do eggs every single day. I can have them sometimes, but there's just those little personalized things that we discover, and we do find freedom and flexibility, and we find those little hacks and things that make it easier and doable for us so that we can feel our best, so that we can thrive, whether we're just living, regular life, whether we're trying to get pregnant, whether we're trying to have the healthiest possible pregnancy or
Yeah.
feel our best and do our best work as parents. All of that comes into play and it's so meaningful. So I'm just really grateful to you for putting this together, consolidating the information into something so, uh, with such a positive tone and so much clarity. I think it's just a wonderful resource. I'm curious to hear from you. What do you really most hope readers walk away with after reading this book?
Ultimately, I hope it will prevent more pregnancies being lost. I think if I was to hear a few years from now that someone had held on to a pregnancy, had a baby for the information that was in the book, then as we were talking about before we hit record, all of those many hours would have been so worth it. That would be like the the ultimate reassurance that it was needed. I think in a more general sense, if readers are finishing the book with a sense of hope that they can do this. I know when I first fell pregnant, I just thought, how am I going to navigate all of this? I was on Armour Thyroid, which is a very unconventional thyroid medication here in the UK. I did not have a clue how to navigate that whilst pregnant, knowing that many doctors would not agree with it. If there are other people in similar situations feeling overwhelmed, feeling lost, knowing that they want to become a parent or expand their family, but they're having these hurdles at the same time, if the book can produce clarity and hope for them, and just give them like a renewed sense of, yes, you can do this and you're not alone. There's loads of us out there that are navigating it. Then yeah, ultimately it's reached the goal that I wanted it to. So yeah, I think there's as thyroid patients anyway, we have a lot of hurdles that we come up against. For those that are going through fertility and pregnancy, there's just even more of it. And I think one thing that we've not hugely touched on is that in terms of thyroid medication types, we're not often told that different types of thyroid medication besides levothyroxine or Synthroid can be safe during pregnancy. And there's some caveats there in terms of needing to be monitored correctly and having a doctor who knows what they are doing with that medication. Yeah, a lot of us don't even know that basic information. A lot of people don't realize that there are other medication options out there or that they could be available during pregnancy. And as you said, if you'd have known that as someone who doesn't convert T4 to T3 very well, just like myself, then you could have had a very different pregnancy and postpartum experience. So yeah, there's a lot of information that I just want to get into the hands of the right people, and hopefully they can have a less anxiety-inducing experience than I did, and probably many other people as well.
Well, having reviewed the book, I can assure you that you achieved all of that and more. This really is an awesome resource, the Positive Thyroid Pregnancy Book by Rachel Hill. Rachel, where can people find you online and how can they get their hands on the Positive Thyroid Pregnancy Book?
Yeah, so it's available online. I'm currently working through getting it across other bookstores around the world. You can find me on theinvisiblehypothyroidism.com. That's my website. I've got hundreds of articles on there now, all about the many aspects that hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's touch. And how to navigate those things. I'm very active on Facebook and Instagram in particular. If you just search for the invisible hypothyroidism, again, it's a real mesh of informational and relatable content. So I'm not a doctor, I'm a thyroid patient, but I am very experienced in all of the things that we face, all of the struggles that we go through as thyroid patients. So it's just my passion to not only educate others and raise that awareness, but to also help people find their thyroid tribe and yeah, just know that they're not alone with all of this. That really is my main aim with everything that I do.
Awesome. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your wisdom and expertise with us today. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and fun to reconnect. So thanks for being on today's show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for spending this time with me and tuning into today's episode of the Thyroid-Healthy Bites podcast. If you've enjoyed today's show, please don't forget to like, subscribe, or leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. Your support makes this show possible. For more thyroid healthy food and lifestyle inspiration, check out my free library of thyroid-friendly recipes and lifestyle content at hypothyroidchef.com and the Hypothyroid Chef YouTube channel. As we wrap it up, head to the show notes for information and links to everything we talked about today, along with the link to my free thyroid-friendly grocery guide download. I'm Ginny Mahar, your thyroid health and cooking coach, wishing you happy cooking, happy thriving, and the best of health. See you next time.